Hi, Twinkle. Welcome to our show. It's strange to be across a screen from you. Usually, it's a computer,
Yeah,
and we're busy writing. 10 years it's been since I walked into your sister's apartment to ask you to write. We didn't know that we'd get a many best-selling books from you, viral columns, and now the sequel. So, how is Mrs. Funnybones Returns different from you? Definitely older, wiser.
I'm wider. I always say not wiser. But I want to say one thing. There are moments in my life when I win an award or I'm called on stage and people ask me about my writing. And I say there are, like how you have Brahma, Vishnu, and Mahesh. Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Let's get into controversy right at the beginning by naming gods. For me, in my life, there are three women who helped me, reach this position. And one is Sarita Tanwar, one is Chiki Sarkar, and the third is you, Neelam Raj. I would not be able to do anything that I've been able to do if it was not for the three of you all and the three of you. And I still remember when you came, I was writing for the DNA, and you said, "Leave them and come to me." Okay, they're a big poacher, by the way.
Yeah.
But I said, "No, I'm going to try. I'm going to write for both," and I did for a year. And I didn't know that that was a life changing moment. We very rarely recognize those moments. It's only in hindsight. But it changed my life. And it's so surreal that now we're sitting across and you're interviewing me when all I feel is gratitude towards you.
Oh, thank you so much for saying that. Most people, when you edit their columns, are like, "Why are you changing so much?" And we've also had many fights over lots of things, but we've usually agreed on the final result.
We did.
So, a lot of the stories in this collection are about women reclaiming space, about their last names to their wrinkles. So, how important do you think is women writing about women and their lived experiences?
Well, I would say it would not be important for women to write about women if men wrote about women well, but they don't. And I believe that there is a reason why men don't write about women as well as women write about both genders.
Hmm.
And that is because we've been trained from a very young age to be aware of what the men around us are thinking. Because very often our safety depends on that. Not just physical safety, but the atmosphere when you whether you're working, is it positive towards you, is it negative? All of these things. So we are very aware of what men are thinking, whereas men have never really needed to pay attention to what women are thinking. So men don't write about women well, and if we don't write about ourselves, then who will? And that is why I think I write primarily about women and women's lives, and especially about women as they get older.
So, your last column was about menopause, which
Yes.
became quite a hit. And when we discussed, I said, "Oh, it's going to be mainly women who'll read it." But actually, a lot of men ended up reading it. So do you do you find that reaction? Do you find that a male readership for you? Did you surprise you for columns that you think are mainly about women?
I'm not really sure. I don't really think so much about who is reading this beyond a point. There are times when I write columns which are focused maybe a little bit on how politics influences society, and there I think about who's reading this. But when I write columns which are sort of, I would say, lived experiences, then I'm writing as a form of communication of saying, this is what's happening to me. Is it out there in the world? Do you feel like this? I think Zadie Smith actually compared an essay and a novel, and she said an essay or a column is basically, I'm paraphrasing, but like sending a flare up in the sky and saying, do you see this too? And a column about menopause or about aging or about even incontinence was a flare in the sky. So if men are reading it, I'm glad, because perhaps they may understand what is really happening within a woman's body, because often we are unable to articulate these feelings.
I think you've talked about hot flushes and periods more than any other columnist in this country.
It's because it's been a decade. At one point, I was menstruating, and now I just have hot flushes. So, um, I think it was important to talk about these things because there's a taboo around it, and there are two ways that I wanted to do this. There are certain things, and of course now when and as you know, the Times of India columns, they're reaching a certain class of people and a certain section of people. But when I thought the conversation needed to go into the masses, then I use my other weapon, which is cinema. And so then we took menstruation, which was a column, and we used that topic, in a movie so it could reach further. So I use whatever tools I have to get my message across, and sometimes I'm successful and sometimes I'm not.
I wanted to quote one of your now famous lines because you used it on too much also, that I'd rather be a bitch than a bichari. So why are women stuck in this duality? It's this patriarchal script. We have to be either a devi or a devil, and we can't be anything in between.
I think we're living every form in between. But if there was a choice for me personally, and this is just, call it my defense, call it my guard, this is how I would rather be perceived. Maybe I've spent my whole life putting up this front where I don't want other people to see my weaknesses because maybe I'm actually more fragile than most other people, so I need a defense. And so, I say these lines and then sometimes they go viral. And I know a lot of young women who are adopting it in their office. I know a lot of people who probably don't like it, but it was what I felt at that point and what I feel now.
So, you write a lot about struggling with weight issues, menopause, etc. But we don't generally get that, Bollywood wife kind of glimpse into that life, no vampire facials or exotic holidays. Do you deliberately keep the glam out and the grit in, keep it real?
There is a certain part that I do keep out because I don't think that that makes any sense to somebody from a different sort of world. And the other thing, we've discussed this, and you've
Yeah.
sometimes really laughed at me because I will tell you that what I'm interested in and what my little skill set is the fact that I can find a common thread between completely disparate, you know, issues. You've
True.
so many
On the
times,
phone, yeah. On the
I've,
phone, we've discussed. Okay,
yes,
I just can't see how this is going to come
yeah.
together, but
So I call you sometimes and I say, Neelam, I'm thinking I'll do a column about these four different things. And you're like, but how are you going to put it together? And I'll say, I will do it. I'll do it. Now, over a period of time, you've stopped asking me, how will you do it? Because eventually I will do it. So, again, when I'm writing, I feel that I am in this very, very privileged position where I have a life that I lead, which is, sort of glamorous. And there's another part of me that has never wanted to be part of that glamorous life because I was born in it and I wanted to see everything else. And so I fight against it. It's not just in the columns, which is a fight within me. I want to also, and I did it. I took my kids to the park, I take them to the beach, I go with them in rickshaws. I used to take a train to work when I was a young girl.
oh,
I'm
you
not
did
saying.
actually take the Bombay local.
Yes, I did. My boss Harish Shah used to live in his Bagicha. His store used to be. So I should, at Charmi Road, so I would go all the way there and come back for a short period of time. I used to also take the local to go to Fashion Street when I was young because that was where you would get all those fancy clothes which you would not get anywhere else. And I had a friend, Sejal. She lived in Matunga, so I would stop at Matunga, and she would get on, and then we would go to Fashion Street together. So I lived very different lives within this one life, and maybe that's why I can write about various things. Of course, I can write about the glamorous life, but it just doesn't interest me as much.
So you are very self-aware about your privilege. So how do you keep this connect with the reader?
Because there is a part of me that is I suppose, like every other woman, there are, even when I moved to the UK, you would think that those women are very different. Their problems are very different. And I would look at them and it would just be they are also grappling with ambition and exhaustion. It's just that they are conveying that in a different accent. It's pretty much that. Again, I look for the common thread between people. I can look for what makes me different from someone else, but I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in what I have in common with you. When you and I chat, not always as editor and columnist, but even as people, we always talk about the things that we are facing which are similar.
Yeah, yeah.
And that is what I like to do through my work.
What made you enroll for the creative writing course at Goldsmiths? You were already quite a accomplished writer at that point. Why did you want to go back to the university?
Shall I tell the world that you and Chiki Sarkar kept dissuading me, saying, it will change your voice, it will change your voice, don't go? Both of you said that. I felt that during the lockdown, I did two courses at Oxford. I did beginners in life writing and advanced in fiction. And it gave me a lot of joy. I felt I learned a lot of technical skills, and I liked being immersed in the world of writing. And I thought, well, I'm 49. If I don't do this now, when am I going to do it? I also, like every, or like most women, I have to juggle my life around my children and where they are in their life. My daughter was still in primary. My son was going to university. It was the right time. So I, applied to a bunch of universities. I got rejected by two or three, and I luckily got into Goldsmiths, which was my first choice. And so I went. Um, And the strange thing is that my voice did not change. My fiction writing and my process towards fiction changed. But the way I approach my column, the way I write the column, the skeleton, my first draft, it's exactly the same because I had already spent so many years doing it that I think my process was pretty complete when it came to approaching the column. But the way that I approach stories and novels completely changed.
You kind of honed the craft better, right? After the course.
Yeah, I think the scaffolding, the behind the scenes, of the narrative. How do you manage time within a story? How do you, which is the most efficient point of view to use? Um, Underlining characters, inner monologues that you let out, what is not said on the page. Those are things that I learned, but you can't teach anyone really what to write about, their observations, the notes, the things that they kind of, the things that only they will notice and other people won't, that you can't teach anyone.
You write a lot when you're traveling. During your time in London also you wrote, but I always felt that your best columns were when you were at home. Why is
Yes,
that?
you said that to me many times, and I completely agree. I think it's because my columns come from interacting. They come from, and that's why I remember having this conversation with you during COVID where I said it's the first time in my life I have writer's block because I'm not going anywhere. I'm not talking to anybody, and I'm really struggling. So for me, the column is a space I can do fiction when I'm away from this environment, when I'm away from India. But the column is dependent upon local flavors. What are people saying? What are they thinking about right now? What's happening, in Delhi? What's happening in the Bihar elections? What's going on, I guess, all around me? That the way that people use language and strange things. I mean, just maybe if we take yesterday, there was a domestic dispute between two of my staff members where one thought that the other was bullying him. And I was just looking at it and I've gone back and I've taken notes now. Will it appear in a column? Maybe it will appear in a column where I'm this mediator and I felt like I'm some sarpanch of a village and I'm this wise old lady who's telling them about, how both of you are such great people. And so I need that. I need India to write this column. I need to be immersed in our culture and our, and all the fabric, the colors, the language to be able to write this column.
You do mine a lot of real life headlines for your columns. I remember that, that Gujarat mother who eloped with the boys
Yeah, with the
had, remember?
rooms, yeah,
Yeah.
with
And then the Mumbai elderly couple who wanted the right to die.
yeah.
So a lot of real life stories
So
you mine for
some,
your.
exactly, but you have to, because also, let's be clear. When I first started writing columns, I had so much to say within me, all the things that I had observed and thought about, for a good, well, 39 years. And then after you started writing, after you start writing for a while, in the beginning, you're then again trying to say the same thing you have said in a different way. And then finally, you come to a place where you're saying different things. So you look, instead of looking inward, you're looking outward. You look at headlines, you look at people around you, you look at what's happening, what are they talking about, and then you draw on that. I think it's part of, being a columnist over so long.
Actually, the elderly
We've
and
never had
aging
these
role,
discussions. We've
we
never
never.
spoken about this. It's always like,
Mm.
Neelam, I think I'm going to write about, Labubus and Plato's idea of beauty, and I'm going to join this. And you're like, what? But
True. Yeah, we've never had this intense discussion around your columns before and your writing process.
no,
So, almost every member of your household has made it into the column, from your Desi Jeeves to the dog to sister, mom-in-law. So, do they object to it? Do they feel that, you take many parts of their life and put it on for
and
everybody to see?
they've given up. Also, it's not completely accurate. There is some fictionalization, and they are aware of that. I say that openly, that there's 30% of it is all made up. I use my family as an example of families across India. It's easier to sort of demonstrate what's going on within other families by using my own. So it's almost like, in my head, I think of my family as the Simpsons, and I push them ahead, these cartoon characters, and make them do things. A lot of it is, of course, based on things that really happen, the things that they say. My sister is the only one who grumbles about being in the column very regularly, but she's also my first reader. And when I first started writing columns, she used to read all of them before they even came to you. But I think now they're used to it. They don't really say anything.
Actually, do Akshay and Rinki still read your columns beforehand, or
Now I'm an old hand. Now I don't need their guidance. So no, they don't.
in this collection, actually, you're known for your wit and humor, but actually, one of the stories that most touched me, though I've read it before, was the one about grief, your friend's son who passed
Yeah.
away. Uh, is there kind of pressure to be always funny and be Mrs. Funny Bones?
There is pressure. Um, and I really felt it when I was writing one of my books. I felt that there was pressure externally, there was pressure internally to be funny on every page. And that was partly also why I took a sabbatical from writing fiction, and I went and I did my course. And then I wrote Welcome to Paradise, where it was a book about loss and grief, and I didn't have the desire to be funny on every page. And so I wrote stories exactly the way I wanted them to be. So there was a lot of, I think, internal pressure, I would have to say, more than external, but I don't succumb to it anymore.
And tell us about this show. How did Too Much come about? Uh, were you friends with Kajol beforehand, or it was just a surprise?
I interviewed her once for the Icons, and of course, I know her, but we were not, I would say, friends, though I felt we did have a few things in common. She is also someone who doesn't play games. What you see is what you get. And so I felt that when we work together, I don't have to worry about what's happening behind the scenes. She'll be straightforward with me, and I'll be straightforward with her. And it was, I think in my head, I'm at this stage in my life where I'm doing things that push me out of my comfort zone, because it's very easy to stagnate. I need things to shake me up, shake me out. So whether it's this, whether it was going back to university, whether it's planning a road trip across Ladakh, these are things I want to do because I can't afford to get stagnant and complacent.
So you sparked off quite a controversy over the Raat Gayi Baat Gayi remark. Did you actually mean to make light of infidelity, or are people misreading what you said?
It was part of a light-hearted game. It was not meant as a serious debate. If it had been a serious debate, then I would have said that we need to evaluate whether monogamy is a construct when we moved from nomadic, um, sort of lifestyles to farming, and then, the a man and his claim over his offspring came into being, versus monogamy truly being something that helps society thrive and holds it together. That is a serious debate. This was just a joke and it was a light-hearted moment.
To get back to your writing and reading, how did you get into this reading habit and how do you pass it on to your children? Is it an effort in this age of social media?
Definitely. Because there's so many distractions and you have to cut across so much. Um, I think for me, it came easily. We didn't have many other things to do. So it was easy to get into the habit of reading. I was surrounded by readers. And it was always my escape. It was a place where no matter what was happening around me, I could lose myself within those pages. Today, there's so many other places that you can lose yourself. So, yes, it is difficult. I think the only way you can encourage your children to read is by, well, I guess setting an example and making it slightly more fun and letting them choose the books that they really want to read instead of, the classics or something you think is worthy.
You have a bedtime reading ritual, is it, with your children?
I used to have. Now I mean, my daughter's
Now
13,
they're
my
grown
son
up,
is
yeah.
23. I can't really have a bedtime ritual, but yes, I used to read to them and we would read together. Um, I have a bedtime ritual about reading that extends just to me, which is, this, I read
Yeah.
science fiction stories to fall asleep, and that doesn't change. And I think, yeah, that is my life. What can I say?
So, we used to have a kind of a year-ender ritual where you used to make a list of top 10 books for us. So, do you have something on your mind this year, something that you loved, that you read, that you would like to talk about?
Um, I read The Loneliness of Sonia and Sunny, and though it is a very thick book, you can use it to, well, knock out a burglar who comes in. It's also one of the most beautiful books I've read in a long, long time. And I think, well, it's meant for an international, global audience, but because we're Indians, we relate to it a lot more than I guess somebody from the West would because of all the context and all the nuances. So I think that was absolutely wonderful. To me, that is the one of the best books I read this year. And I have to, and along with all the other things I read, primarily my science fiction, because of Tweak Book Club, I have to read a book a month, and we go through a lot of them. But this one really stands out.
And what hurts more? Is it a critique of your TV show or a critique of your writing? What would hurt more? A negative book review or somebody ripping apart the TV show?
I don't look at things like that. I look at criticism and see if there is something of value in it. And of the person who's saying it, if I hold them in some sort of esteem. And if there is something that is valid, I will use it to get better. And if it's somebody that I respect, and if it doesn't, then what do I care? I mean, there are dogs barking outside. Should I react to that? No.
And getting back to Mrs. Funnybones Returns, how did you pick this particular set of columns for the book? Did you want to show different sides because there's loneliness is aging, uh, some of it is social media, losing the mobile phone with the story that it starts with. How did you put it together?
I wanted to start with, I guess it's almost in my head. The column has been going on um, over this extended period. So when I decided to do a compilation, I had to also see how I was managing time. My mother in law, for example, was alive when we started writing the columns. By the time by the time a couple of years ago, she passed away. And so when I had to do a piece on her, I had to manage time in that piece. Technology has changed, people have changed, elections came and went. So I wanted to show a decade passing. I wanted to show a little bit of a change about India, what was happening, what was going on, both politically, socially. And I think I picked whatever I thought was also the pieces that spoke to people, that meant something to people, and then I put it all together in that format.
I'm biased, but I think it's a wonderful collection.
Oh, you better be biased. You are an integral part of all of this.
Yeah, it was, rereading those columns. I somehow had, it made them fresh again. I didn't even feel as if I'd edited them at all in the first plot.
I mean, we fought about a couple of columns. I have to say that there was a column I wrote about a godman that you did not print in the paper. And you said you have to cut out paragraphs of this if you want it in the paper. And we had a very big fight about it. And I felt it has to go the way it has to go. But it didn't. So, things happen.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, we pulled through all these years.
But you have your own Godman avatar, Baba Twingdev. How did that come about?
You didn't let me write about another godman, so I had to invent one, didn't I? And if you cut this part out of this podcast, we are going to have trouble.
Well, we'll see.
We'll see. Okay. Then
That's it.